Hey you, welcome to the MoviesxMelanin Show, where I talk about the good, the bad, and the great of movies. If this is your first time here, welcome in. And if you've been here before, welcome back, my movie mavens. I am your host, Vershana McKendrick, and on today's show, I am reviewing How to Train Your Dragon. If you know me, this is one of my favorite animated movies of all time. One of, there is no favorite. But overall, it's funny. A couple people I've told, I'm like, I will refuse to review How to Train Your Dragon, Pirates of the Caribbean, and Star Wars. Yet, somebody made the request. So here we go. So, How to Train Your Dragon, created by DreamWorks Animation Studios, dropped in 2010 with co-directors Chris Sanders and Dean DeBlois. Chris Sanders and Dean DeBlois actually worked on Lilo and Stitch together by co-directing that as well. Chris Sanders also did The Croods and most recently The Wild Robot, which we just reviewed on the podcast with Aaron Randolph. And then Dean DeBlois co-directed How to Train Your Dragon with Chris while also doing the other two solo. It has a runtime of about an hour and 38 minutes with an overall critic score of 99% on Rotten Tomatoes and an 8.1 out of 10 on IMDb. My earliest memory with this franchise was seeing this one in theaters. And I think this is like one of the first movies I can remember, at least, seeing in movie theaters, and it has been my favorite ever since. This movie and this franchise has expanded well beyond the singular movie. It had like online gaming that you could do. It had TV shows that you could watch. And from the moment we saw this in theaters to the third one in 2019, I have loved this franchise. And as a young movie lover, as a kid, it's one of those movies that fully immersed me from the moment I sat down to the moment I finished. A couple movies have done that. Of course, you have Lion King. And when we're talking about animal-related movies, we're talking about Free Willy. I like it. It's a special movie in my heart. Like, the soundtrack's amazing, the characters are amazing, the visuals are amazing. There's a lot of things that this movie didn't do wrong. So as we get into the review, it might sound like I'm more praising the film, but overall and at the end of the day, there's something. No movie is perfect, you know, and at some point we have to kind of dig deep into it, which is why I didn't want to originally, because it is one of my fan favorites. But going into it, and in a critic's mindset, there are certain things that bothered me, but not enough for me not to still love this movie. And that being said, we're going to go ahead and get into the synopsis of this movie. How to Train Your Dragon is about a young Viking who aspires to hunt dragons and becomes an unlikely friend to a young dragon himself, and overall learns that there may be more to the creatures than he assumed. The main cast includes Jay Baruchel, I'm going to say, as Hiccup. We have Gerard Butler as Stoic, America Ferrera as Astrid, Craig Ferguson as Gobber, Christopher Mintz-Plasse as Fishlegs, Kristen Wiig and TJ Miller as Roughnut and Toughnut, the twins, and we have Jonah Hill as Snotlout. And you guys know we talk about the movie as if we're best friends, that we've both seen it. So if you haven't seen it, go ahead and pause it right here and go ahead and go watch the movie. And if you haven't seen it in a while, go ahead and refresh yourself so we can talk about it as detailed as possible. And you know, we give 5 out of 5 stars, but each star is broken up into half stars, and each of those half stars are made up of the different elements of film. So if it passes on that element, it gets a half star, and if it doesn't do well, doesn't quite hit the mark, it does not get that half star. And that is how we get our 5 out of 5 or 4 out of 5 or 2 out of 5 rating. So starting with plot, the story's captivating. It builds a world that easily immerses its viewers from beginning to end. You're excited to see what happens next, and as we follow this kid and his unlikely pet, and they curate this friendship and they unlock secrets of what a, I guess, forbidden friendship could really look like. And when you're talking about Burke or even the Dragon's Nest or the Dragon's Island, the creators of this movie really created a world where every kid thought they could train a dragon themselves and ride it into the sunset and start a brand new adventure. So thoroughly, plot already gained half a star. Moving into attraction, This movie is thoroughly exciting from the first scene to its last scene. The film's opening scene threw us into this exciting Norse kind of world that had friendly yet menacing Vikings that were troubled by these fiery pests. The excitement kind of grew with each new breed that was introduced to us, the monstrous nightmares, the gronkles, the deadly natters. From the dragon fighting lessons into the dragon training montages, every single thing brought something unique to the story to add a new level to the movie magic, gaining it half of its star. When we're talking about theming, we're talking about the different lessons that you kind of gain along the way. The movie walks with very clear themes of a coming-of-age story while it deals with themes of manhood, strong connections of friendships, and one of the biggest lessons or takeaways from this film is to lead with your heart. Along this journey that Hiccup kind of goes on, he's faced with challenge after challenge where the choice is to go along with traditions set by his father or the tribe, or he can choose to go with what he feels is right. And time again, he chooses his heart. And while that kind of creates an immediate separation and from the standard that's set before him and the distance from his family and all that kind of stuff, it allows him to go through a whole new adventure that hasn't been done before with a Viking like him, and it wouldn't have been done without it. So all that theme was very clear throughout the movie. It came through with every single character and all the relationships that were there. So theme, clear as day, gains that half star. When we're going to get into acting, this is my biggest problem. This is the problem child for me with this movie. Now, the main cast, I'm talking about Hiccup, Stoic, Astrid, Gobber. Fantastic performances like Gerard Butler and Craig Ferguson's chemistry on screen as best friends comes through clear as day and is so enjoyable. Even that in the final fight with the Red Death, they're like, I can double that time. You know, like that kind of friendship there comes through clear as day, and you would want a relationship like Stoic and Gobber have.
Right.
Gobber, go with the men.
I think I'll stay, just in case you're thinking of doing something crazy.
I can buy them a few minutes if I give that thing someone to hunt.
Then I can double that time.
Here!
Oh, no.
And so I enjoy the chemistry the two of them have. And again, Stoic and Hiccup and Astrid, all these relationships work hand in hand with one another. My problem with acting is that these side characters, Fish Legs, Rough Nut, Tough Nut, Snotlout, they kind of just get lost in the background. And if they were going to be in the background, they shouldn't have gotten as much screen time. You know what I mean? Fish Legs, funny enough, I think out of all the side characters, did the most. But when it comes to Rough Nut, Tough Nut, and Snotlout specifically, they fade into the background. Funny enough, when you look at their character designs, there's a sequence when they're doing the dragon training where literally the only people that kind of stand out are Astrid and Fish Legs. The rest of them kind of just literally blend into the background. Whether it comes to their colors, the similarity of the designs of their faces, there's nothing really unique about the three of them that makes me say like, oh, the story couldn't have happened without them. And primarily because this is an ensemble piece, I have to judge it as such, meaning I can't just give it a star because the four leads were great when the other three were so weak. You know what I mean? Like I have to judge it as a whole. So because of that and because of the weak three side characters, I am going to give this a 0 in general. So this star a 0, not the movie, a 0. Moving into dialogue, and it's funny because my thought was thinking to give the 0 stars to dialogue instead of acting, but I don't think it really had anything to do with the script. The script and the story wasn't the problem for me. It was purely the performances. When it comes to dialogue, the dialogue was great when it came to exposition. It pushed the movie forward, even though like the main protagonist, Toothless, I know it's kind of like Hiccup in Toothless's movie. Toothless doesn't talk. So between the body language and the dialogue of the other characters, it does really push the story forward. And the movie opens up with a very memorable piece of dialogue.
This is Burke. It's 12 days north of Hopeless and a few degrees south of freezing to death. It's located solidly on the meridian of misery. My village. In a word, sturdy. And it's been here for 7 generations, but every single building is new. We have fishing, hunting, and a charming view of the sunsets. The only problems are the pests. You see, most places have mice or mosquitoes. We have dragons. Most people would leave. Not us. We're Vikings. We have stubbornness issues.
And it sets the atmosphere to what is to come. And the dialogue plays a really large role when it comes to the comedic timing of the project, and it doesn't miss. So overall, that is going to give it a half star. Now, this undisputed is a stunning movie. When I'm talking about cinematography here, every fight sequence, every montage, every dragon fight or flight lesson was beautiful. The use of browns, greens, reds gives each character their each and unique color and their shade to make them stand out a little bit more. Each dragon being unique and standing out in every scene that it was in based off the background and all the characters. Even Toothless, who's primarily kind of a black and midnight blue, his body stands out with the help of those green eyes and maybe like the pink gums of his teeth. Each shot felt beautifully balanced and the unique world that the designers created. And the best show of that kind of the film's depth and beauty was Astrid's flight with Hiccup and Toothless.
Toothless, what are you doing? We need her to like us! And now the spinning. Thank you for nothing, you useless reptile.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Just get me off of this thing.
Now, the shot overall showed the beauty of the landscape that she'd kind of seen and grew up with in her entire life, but showed the perks of changing perspective into something that you see every day, which kind of was a major takeaway with the lesson overall, because these dragons have been there their whole lives. And overall, once you kind of change your perspective on something, it might not be as bad, or it just might not be what you think it is. Not everything is what it seems, you know? And cinematography easily flies away with that star. And speaking of flying and kind of pacing and how fast and slow something goes, we can go right into editing. The movies ran at a really steady pace. It moved fast when it needed to and moved slow when it needed to. However, I wouldn't say there was a moment of dullness in this movie. For a runtime of about an hour and 36 minutes, which is kind of average for a kid's movie, it kept you moving the whole time. Any low time that was there was for you to process what had happened previously. But they used those moments to expand the relationships that certain characters had or to push the story along. A great example would definitely be right after the final exam with the monstrous nightmare and Hiccup and Toothless.
Oh, no, please, just don't hurt him. Please don't hurt him.
Put it with the others.
If they don't bring enough food back, they'll be eaten themselves. There's something else on their island, Dad. It's a dragon like
Their
you've never...
island? So you've been to the nest?
Did I say nest?
How did you find it?
But no, I didn't. Toothless did. Only a dragon can find the island. Oh, no, Dad, no, please. It's not what you think.
And when Toothless kind of comes in to save the day, it goes from a very high-paced, high-power scene to a low-lit, low-energy scene in order for you to process and kind of come back to base. But they use it to kind of give Stoic that information that you need a dragon to get to an island. And you're testing the relationships between Stoic and Hiccup here. So again, every moment was usable, and I don't think that anything got too far away from us as a viewer. And with editing taking that star, we are currently at a 3.0 out of 5 as we get into my favorite section in this movie, which is sound. When it comes to the sound design and the soundtrack, the composer John Powell and Foley artists really came together to make a masterpiece. If you don't specifically know John Powell, I guarantee you've heard him before, especially if you're in my generation. He kind of made our childhood. He did the soundtracks for movies like Shrek, Robots, Happy Feet, Kung Fu Panda, Solo, A Star Wars Story, and all 3 How to Train Your Dragon movies. His music brought a lot of different levels of this film to life. I don't think another composer could have done what he did. The only person I could think of would maybe be Hans Zimmer. Now, Hans Zimmer did The Lion King and Pirates of the Caribbean. And if we're talking about these large swells and these journey pieces, I think he's the only other person that could have done this, because what John did, he captured the sound of a dragon in flight. And when it comes to that, you're talking about the ups and downs, the spins, the ferocity of a dragon, all within the sounds of an orchestra, and that's hard to do, specifically these days. When it comes to the Foley artistry, the dragons didn't speak once, but their sounds and their body language were beautifully articulated, and their feelings came across beautifully. So whether it was the coos or these giant roars that came out of these dragons' bodies, they could speak for themselves loud and clear without saying a single word. With that, sound gets a resounding half star from me. And on our last two, we're going to go to directing and it factor. Directing, it's simply put, we have Chris Sanders and Dean DeBlois, which we talked about it. They did Lilo and Stitch. They've done The Wild Robot. They've done Croods. These movies all are kind of laced with like a childlike wonder. When we're talking about Lilo and Stitch, it kind of might be the best example. With Toothless's design taking a very large inspiration from Stitch. It's basically another cute and a menacing creature that has stolen our hearts. But they were able to take these two stories and intertwine these strong values of family and character growth within very unique situations. And again, Dean DeBlois, he captured that energy throughout all three movies, the continuity, the beauty of the films, the storytelling, all these different things were captured unanimously through all three. So easily giving this one a half star. And when it comes to it factor, I really haven't seen another film like How to Train Your Dragon. You know, DreamWorks is known to create projects that movies like Disney wouldn't even make. You have movies like Shrek, Kung Fu Panda, Chicken Run that could only be made at DreamWorks when you're talking about the level of storytelling here, and the types of stories they tell. Overall, this movie is well done to the point where it was given 2 stunning sequels. Whether we're talking about the characters, the world of Berk, the dragons themselves, it creates a movie that deserves to be seen by every lover of animation and fantasy. So this movie has received a well-deserved last half star for it factor, bringing the total to 4.5 out of 5 stars for its captivating world building, its thrilling action sequences, and its strong theme of friendship and self-discovery. Now, while the lead performances were memorable and the visuals were stunning, the supporting characters did not stand out to me, which is why dialogue did not receive its half star. Nevertheless, the exceptional cinematography, editing, and sound design elevated this film, making it more than unique and a highly engaging experience that stands out in the animation genre. And as unwilling as I was to kind of review this movie, I'm kind of glad I did. To revisit a childhood classic for me and to still get things out of it, to be able to critique it the way that it was kind of a fulfilling and full circle experience for sure. And now that I'm starting grad school in a couple weeks, it's just kind of showing me that I'm going to have to dig down and revisit who I was in order to establish who I'm going to be as a filmmaker. And I'm excited to do so. So this was a very fulfilling moment for me. But before I roll the credits, if you want to keep up with things Movies and Melanin, you can find me on @MoviesxMelanin, and that is MoviesxMelanin on Instagram and TikTok. And then if you want to see me on YouTube or Spotify, look up The Movies and Melanin Show. Let's go ahead and stay connected and keep this conversation going. After all, it's more merrier at the movies. And remember, new episodes drop every other Wednesday, so mark your calendars because you won't want to miss the next feature presentation. And I want to hear from you, my movie mavens. Did my critique match what you thought about the movie? What should I review next? Hit me up with your suggestions and join me on our community on Discord. And maybe your pick will be our next blockbuster episode. Thanks for tuning in, and until next time, keep your popcorn buttery and your movie choices stellar. I'll see y'all later.